everybody. It is December 12th. Christmas is just around the corner, like the Terminator.
Yeah.
Coming for us.
Well, the thing that I really love about this time of the year, Eli, is I love how dark it is, and I'm going to be very sad once the 21st hits and it starts getting less dark.
No, I hate it. I hate everything about the winter season. I picked the wrong part of the world to be born into,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. But, we're back. EDH Takes. Podcast of the year.
Yeah, and I'm Elijah Samuelson.
And I'm Spencer Cook.
And yeah, like I said, we're coming up on the Christmas season. Have you done any Christmas shopping, Spencer?
You put me on the spot here, Eli. I have not done any Christmas shopping. I'm a bad person.
That is me every single year, except this year. I just happened to be downtown a couple weeks ago, and it was Small Business Saturday, and I was like, I'm going to go to some shops.
I want to support some small busineses.
Yeah, I'll knock a couple names off my list, and I got a big-ass list. It sucks having so many friends.
Wow, sick brags, bro. No, but the point here is that the Christmas season is expensive, and when you spend a lot of money on Christmas gifts, can't afford as many Magic cards. So today we're going to be talking about the price of Magic cards, the cost of Magic cards, and the surrounding conversation with that sort of stuff. Yeah,
we broke it down into a couple things we want to talk about involving the cost of Magic cards, which I think most people are of the opinion it is an ever-increasing cost, especially for Commander players.
I think that is very fair to say that is the general outlook, right? And I agree with it. I mean, I'm not going to disagree that it's an expensive game. That's obvious, right?
Yeah.
No argument there. But, we're there. It doesn't have to always be as expensive as some people make it out to be. And I think we're going to talk about, some tips to maybe save some money, but also get into, how accessible the format is, as well as kind of have a little pseudo debate on proxies.
Yeah, and a lot of this is just stemming from our own personal experiences with the cost of Magic, which might be very different than the majority of people, or it might skew a certain way. And so if we're wildly off base on something, absolutely comment about it and
give your perspective. Yeah, the thing with Magic though that I think is so hard is that Magic players, Magic the game kind of can appeal to people with from a lot of different walks of life and socioeconomic backgrounds. So, for example, you've got people recently in the Commander scene who are, very successful football players or musicians who have access to pretty much any card they want, right? And that contrasts that with people who maybe are, they're struggling a little more, or maybe they just don't have the money to spend on the Magic hobby, and, they only have access to cheap stuff, or maybe not even cards at all. And there's a lot to unpack there, so we'll probably get into that a little later.
Yeah, huge disparity in the situations of Magic players and what appeals to certain people.
Yep.
But yeah, our first thing we wanted to talk about is it's a kind of a dead horse topic, I think, that people talk about a lot lately, is the idea of product overload and more Magic, and specifically Commander products, being put out into the market.
Yeah, and we've talked about this already on the podcast this year, but, it seems like every time a set comes out, there is either a set of Commander decks that come out with it, or, even recently they've been printing, in the set boosters for the set, not the draft boosters, they've been printing cards that are not legal in Standard and are only in the set boosters, so pretty much direct to Commander cards. I think they might be legal in some other formats, but they're essentially direct to Commander cards. I think that's the intent. I think that's fair.
Yeah, and luckily, with maybe small exception, I don't believe any of those set booster cards are what people might consider to be big staples.
They're not, they're not prohibitively expensive, I think, for the most part. I know what they released that cycle of spells where they have flashback and they cost less for your Commander's cost. Yep. I think those were in a set booster product, right?
Yep, that was the Midnight Hunt set boosters.
Yeah, and I think those cards are all like $1 each, and they're okay maybe, but they're not like cards that you have to get for your Commander decks.
I remember we did a booster draft, or a sealed actually, with Midnight Hunt, and our friend accidentally picked up set boosters instead of draft boosters.
Yeah, and I in my sealed pool, I had one of my rares was
Visions of Duplicity, I think it is.
which says exchange control of 2 target creatures you don't control. So in a 1v1 sealed format, it does actually nothing. And I think a friend of ours, Thomas, had a Contagion Engine, which was a funny card in a draft format.
Well, you also got Animate Dead, so...
I did have Animate Dead, so...
I think it evened out.
I forgot that I had that. Yeah, that was awesome.
Your deck was brutal. But,
Hell yeah.
Anyways, so that's a new thing that I think people were pretty negative on that idea, the set booster-specific commander cards.
I don't know if I like it too much. I mean, I'm not going to go out here and say, like, I'm wholly against it, but if we're talking about it from a perspective of product fatigue, product overload, I definitely think it contributes to that. I think everyone would agree with that. Yeah,
and now we also have the commander decks, 2 with every standard set, I believe.
Yeah, and I think, what is it? They I not to get into a conversation about Universes Beyond at all, but I think they're releasing commander decks for those that I think might be independent of the sets. I'm not sure about that. I think like the Warhammer decks, right?
My understanding is that the commander product of next year will be Warhammer related.
So like the main commander product, like the 4 or 5 decks or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Well, even if that's not the case, I know they just announced a Secret Lair commander deck. So although those are not new cards, so maybe it's not really the idea of product fatigue. It is that kind of, it's got that illusion of more products coming out for you to buy, which I think can put some mental strain on people.
Yeah, the main point I wanted to talk about with product overload was something I used to do with every new Magic set. You look at the cards, especially the cards in your particular color combinations you like to play.
Or your decks or whatever.
White cards for me.
Yeah.
And I always want my decks to keep getting better and better. I think that's a very common thing. It's people
want to make improvements, right? Yeah.
You want to keep getting stronger, and you feel like there might be a bit of an arms race or power creep. And so every new set, you want to find the new hot, powerful card.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would pick up a certain amount of singles every set and try and upgrade my decks. And it got to a point where I would buy a single, put it in a deck, and then the next set would come out, and there would be a new stronger card, and I might take out that last one I put in, because a lot of the cards in the deck are just so strong that they're not going to be replaced.
You got the history of Magic behind you. You're going to have good cards, right?
Yeah, and it's rare that stuff is better than, say, a Land Tax or a Sun Titan.
Of course. But I know you've talked to me before, Eli, about how you've replaced these cards maybe without even playing them before, because you'd spend 2 months until the next set comes. I mean, spoiler season sometimes comes like a couple weeks after a set comes out on occasion. Or maybe not spoiler season, but there's like leaks and stuff like that.
Yeah. Or sometimes it's also kind of an eyes bigger than your stomach thing, where you see a lot of cool new cards coming out and you think, oh, I need to have these. This looks like it'll be a really good card. You pick up a bunch of it thinking, well, I'm going to put this in just about every deck I have.
Yeah.
And then you bring the cards home and you have to make the cut and you realize, oh, this card is good. It's not better than anything in my deck right now.
Well, and yet another problem that I think players can get suckered into sort of thing is like cards that are very expensive. Like, for a good example recently has been the card Goldspan Dragon, which is now, don't get me wrong, very good card, and I imagine it's very. I have never played it in Commander, but I imagine it to be a good card. Like, I have no doubts about that in my mind. But it's, I think it's like a $40 card or something along those lines, 30 maybe, because it's very good in Standard and stuff like that. And it's very tempting to be like, okay, this is the new hotness, let me just pick it up, right? Because the new set comes out, but it's hard to sustain that every time there's a good card that comes out in a set.
And with cards like Goldspan Dragon, that's a card that, to my recollection, has always been at least double digits expensive.
Yeah.
And I think there was a point when it came out, I was thinking, wow, this card seems really absurd in my Feather deck. I should pick it up, but it's like $20 right now. Should I get it? Should I wait? Usually you'd think you should wait because Standard cards that are valuable tend to decrease in price at a point.
Yeah.
But Goldspan Dragon, like you said, I think it's well above $20 now.
Yeah.
So you might think the next time that happens, well, I should pick it up while it is the $20.
Yeah.
Like, say, Rogavon.
Oh, another example, Solitude is like $40 or $50 now.
Yeah, I got that for, I think, traded in a card and got it for like $15, $20 trade credit.
Yeah, I got one copy I opened. If I didn't open one, I probably would have bought one for, I think it was around $10 or so when it came out. Or $7 to $8, something like that. It's a great card, but it's hard to keep up because you never know how much a card's going to be in a month, right? Like you can make educated guesses, and I know every player loves to have their like people like the idea of speccing on cards and stuff like that, but you can't really know for sure. So it's tempting to just kind of go on a limb for whatever cards you want, but like that's not sustainable to do that on every card.
Yeah, with Magic pricing, you can make very educated guesses, and there are some people who are really good at it and who follow like the other formats well enough to understand a lot of these things, or like rotation or market volume, stuff like that. Most people aren't that.
Well, there's a concept in like financial investments, like stocks and stuff. There's a concept of you ask an investor, oh, what should I invest in? And then they'll tell you, well, if I knew that, I'd be a millionaire, right? Like, what's going to go up? If I knew that, I'd be a billionaire. So it's really hard to know, even people that know, they don't have enough confidence that they could like invest all their money into it. Otherwise they'd do it and they'd make money, right?
Right.
So I don't know. Well, what do you say we move on to another kind of hot button topic? Because this is something that I've seen a lot of players talking about. Is EDH accessible? Because, there's a fair argument to be had, because from one lens, you can look at the price of, like, even just you and I. We have commander decks that are several hundreds of dollars, and I think most players have commander decks that are several hundreds of dollars.
I mean, I say this a lot. I have a commander deck worth more than my car. Now, that is with the
caveat that your car sucks.
That my car is a piece of shit.
Yeah, but it's interesting. But from another lens, if you want to view it from the lens of Commander being affordable, you can make very playable decks, and players do like budget deck series where like they make decks for $25, $50, and I mean $50 isn't anything to sneeze at, but like it is much more approachable, right?
Yeah, Commander, as far as eternal formats, I feel like it has, as far as what you could say is a functioning, like, viable deck. Obviously, you can make a deck that's all basic lands or something.
Like Modern and back.
But
like
making, like,
a decent deck.
The power level of a deck to the price range of the deck, I think it has the widest disparity in that. Like, you can make a really good deck for way cheaper than in, say, like, a good Modern deck.
So you're saying, yeah, like let's think of, like, traditionally, like, the cheap Modern deck you would buy would be like Burn or something, right? And Burn was still like several $100s to buy. Whereas you could, I don't have a good example in my mind right now, but I'm confident you could make a powerful commander deck for less than $100.
Well, because there are commanders that are very niche and build around, like say a classic Feather build is going to use a lot of cards that most people just don't have any use for.
Sure, like Combat Tricks and like Shelter, stuff like that.
Yeah, and those cards are never going to be expensive.
Yeah.
They're mostly commons. There are a lot of draft chaff and non-playables.
Yeah, you put like Young Pyromancer in there and Path to Exile, and those cards total probably like $5 or something.
Right, so you can have a really good, highly synergistic deck built out of cards that are individually very inexpensive.
Well, and I think we would be amiss to talk about the accessibility of the format and not mention precons, right? Because, and I don't want to like beat a dead horse because I feel like we repeat ourselves a lot in a lot of episodes, but I think precons have been pretty good as of late, and maybe a precon isn't powerful enough to sit at every commander table, but I mean I think it's a good starting point.
Well, I think you can't get more financially efficient as far as making a commander deck
from scratch,
than buying a precon.
Like, let's say you have no cards and you just want to have and like you want to build a deck. If you price out all of the cards of a precon commander deck, it's like $80 or $100 or something, and like it's not really valuable for like someone with a bunch of cards to buy that, because like you can't really like piece out and sell all these like 50-cent cards.
Yeah, when we were writing this, I had a thought, like, given, say you can get free access to basic lands because you can get free lands
from a local game store anywhere. Yeah,
they'll just give them out.
A friend will give them to you if you want them.
But I was thinking, what is the price point per card at which you can build a commander deck for less than $50, like around the price of a precon? And I just don't think you can do that.
Well, the problem is the like, let's say you have like, 40 lands or 35 lands or whatever, so you have like 60 cards. That means to build a deck for less than $50, every card needs to be what, like 80 cents or something like that?
I think it's average less than 50 cents or something, or like, yeah, less than 80 cents or
something like that. And I mean, like, and there's a lot of cards that are less than that, but the problem is for every 40-cent card or something, you're like, oh, I'm gonna put a signet in there, and you're like, it's $1.50. Like, oh, that's fine, but that like means that like every 40-cent card is like weighted up a little bit, because like when you put in one $3 card, it makes it very hard to you very easily creep over the $50 mark. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and again, this thought experiment is assuming it's completely from scratch and you don't have an established collection or
staples or whatever. Yeah,
you don't have any cards to work with or trade.
Like, because you're gonna make a green deck. Pretty common that there's a Cultivate Okodama's Reach, and if you're an established player, you might have an extra copy of one or two of those, right?
And those are like $1 right now.
Yeah, so the idea is it's kind of hard to make commander decks for less than $50 unless you're like really scraping the bottom of the barrel.
And obviously, I know there are certain channels that will talk about budget decks and very very cheap decks. They'll be like, whole commander deck, $20.
And
I can't. I don't know. I'd like to be proven wrong. I know that those could be functioning decks and they could play and they can hang. Maybe some of them are better than really bad precons.
But it's just it's really and the another thing is, like, a lot of those decks people will make, like, you'll look a month, 2 months, 1 year later, and they're like $45, $65 because the cards go up. The
prices fluctuate so much.
And when you have a deck that's like, so like it's only got like 25-cent cards to make it under $25 or under $20 or something, if the cards overall just fluctuate 20 cents each, like, that's doubling the price of the deck.
I think the classic example of that is, and next up we have Wayfarer's Bauble.
No, great 20-cent card. And now I think it's over $1, $2, something like that. I don't know what it is.
I think it's gone down to around $1 now, but I think there was a point where it was around $5.
I remember this because I was sorting my Magic collection, and I was like making a section for like $5 and up cards or whatever, or $2 around that, right? And I was like, Wayfarer's Bauble's going in my $5 pile? That is crazy. And like you said, Eli, now I'm pretty sure you're right. It's like $1 or $2 right now. But I think it was $5 at one point.
Yeah, they hit it with a reprint in one of the D&D precons, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Or a couple of them.
What do you want to have a quick conversation about reprints? Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Oh yeah. So that's a big talking point in Magic, is that Wizards they do a terrible job at doing reprints. But
one thing I saw on Twitter just today was someone said something along the lines of, Wizards is doing exactly what they want to be doing with reprints, and that's like reprinting just enough so that they can keep making money and stuff like that. And I'm not sure how I feel about that sort of thing, because I don't know how I feel. Like, do you think if Wizards like just reprint everything to no value, people would be happy?
Well, this is a big debate in Magic, is the accessibility of the game versus the collector's value of game pieces. The most, I think, say like the Professor is very strongly in the camp of, if it was up to him, most Magic cards would be so cheap that pretty much everyone can afford it. I don't think he's of the opinion that he wants every card to be like close to free.
But I think the Professor is someone who is like, if they reprint a card and it devalues my collection, I'm happy with that, right? And some people aren't happy with that. It's a debate, and I don't know if there's a good answer for it. I mean, there's probably a happy medium. I'm not entirely sure where that lies, though, honestly.
Yeah, because I think there are people myself included, that there are definitely cards that I can't afford and I would like to, but I also think it's pretty cool that I have really cool old collectible game pieces, and they are valuable. Like I have an old kind of beat up but white border Wheel of Fortune. I have a Plateau.
But and it really sucks, like, because I mean, as new players, or even as like I'm not a new player, I don't have those cards. I'd like to be able to have those cards and play those cards, but I don't know if I want to get there by, you know, devaluing everyone else's cards, right? So I think maybe that would be a good way to kind of transition us into the proxy conversation, because that's a way that a lot of people have been, you know, a way that like people try to solve the issue of like these very expensive, inaccessible cards, but like they seem like they're like very good in Commander or something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so my valuable cards, and this is sort of this is sometimes a thing with reprints, is a reprint does not always necessarily devalue the original printings of a card. You can have like say like an alpha card is always going to be worth
that
more
is a thing to say
than a reprinted version.
That, I don't know, people made arguments about like the reserve list and stuff because like, oh, they'll retain value because, you know, it's the original copy or whatever, right? And there's arguments back and forth on that.
Like if they reprinted Wheel of Fortune in like a black border, like a different art or something, like, I think they did reprint it as a Judge promo. I don't like that version doesn't necessarily devalue my version.
I think it probably would go down though. Like I think your version would go down, but not to the same price as the new one, right?
Yeah, I think, and maybe I've got this wrong, but I think it devalues it to people wanting the card to use it as a game piece.
Yes,
but not to people
the
looking
collector value is still there.
Right.
Yeah. So in that sense, like it changes. So it doesn't devalue the card; it just changes the supply-demand thing.
Like somebody might be willing to spend $300 on a Wheel of Fortune just to play it in their deck.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then you know, okay, I see where you're coming from. Okay, good. Okay, so the proxy debate, Eli. So this is a thing we haven't done on the podcast before, but Eli and I are going to try to hold two different positions here and kind of argue back and forth a little bit.
I'm going to try and, what's the phrase, steel man?
Yeah. So, to be clear, I'm going to be taking the position of I am against the concept of opening the proxy floodgates like they're just game pieces kind of thing, and Eli is going to be taking the position of proxies, you know, are getting rid of like gatekeeping and just, you know, they're golden, you know, like proxy commander decks fine sort of thing.
Yeah, they're good for allowing people to play the game how they want to play.
Yeah. And so why don't we just start off, Eli? Do you want to maybe give your
and to clarify your position, you're fine with proxies if you own one of the card, right?
That's so I don't think it's really fair to I mean some people just don't like proxies or whatever. But I don't think I'm going to represent that position here. I think I'm going to represent the position of... I'm going to represent my actual position, which is I don't really like proxies very much. If the card is not a card that you own. But I do think it's probably fine to proxy cards that you own at least a copy of, because theoretically you could just swap the card out of a deck into another deck. Kind of the Magic Online way of doing things.
I used to do that with some of my cards, and actually my very valuable deck with those valuable cards in it, I am actually not comfortable bringing that to game stores and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people handling my valuable cards that I don't trust.
And also it can be damaging to switch them out of the deck and put in another deck too.
Right, so I would just as well use a proxy to, as a way, protect that valuable collectible.
So... those are the two arguments we're gonna have. Would you like me to start, Eli? Or would you like to start?
You go ahead and start it off.
Okay, so I think that for the most part, for me, and I don't know if I should like put this on other people, but for me, I don't like the idea of being allowed to play every card in Magic. I think that the restriction of playing cards that you own breeds more creativity for myself, and also it prevents me from what I think would tend to be the Commander arms race. I think when you start introducing proxies of everything, cards that you don't own, the classic arms race of power kind of will naturally happen more. And I know there's the idea of, proxy decks are fine, just match the power level. But I think that, like that arms race idea will happen inevitably in a play group if it'll inevitably reach up higher until the players take a step back and be like, hey, whoa, we gotta chill. Mm-hmm. So just to give another point real quick before I let you speak, I think that for me, because I know I'm a person who's kind of, if I were to allow myself to start proxying cards I don't own, I don't know how I could justify not just like proxying every expensive card that I wanted to play in a deck. And I think that maybe cheapens it a little bit. That I'm not saying for other people. I'm not saying that you playing proxies cheapens the game. I'm saying this is how it makes me feel personally. So that's why I avoid proxy cards I don't own. And just one more thing, sorry. It's a little bit hypocritical too, because right now I do have a deck where I have proxies of cards I don't own. But I think I use those for the purpose of maybe playtesting. I don't have intentions to keep that deck. I'm going to take it apart before you buy it, maybe.
May I ask what deck that is? I can't recall.
I have a deck, Morph Control, Kadena the Slinking Sorcerer,
yeah, okay.
and I proxied like a bunch of the 1-mana dorks that I don't own because I wanted to try them out versus other forms of mana. And in the past, I had proxied kind of a budget Crick CEDH-ish deck, and I had cards proxy I didn't own, like Aetherflux Reservoir, Reign of Filth, Gravecrawler, stuff like that, because I wanted to try to solitaire that for myself. I think that's all acceptable, but I've been talking too much. Give me your your person.
So before I respond, I just want to clarify again. This isn't necessarily my actual opinion. I think I mostly agree with Spencer on this. If you've listened to this show long enough, I think I'm just too much of usually an agreeable person with a lot. I don't like a lot of conflict, and I'm very open to a lot of perspectives. But that's why I thought this would be fun to try and play kind of devil's advocate, but from a position of good faith and represent these concerns in a way that's not
in a generous
way.
In a genuine way, maybe you'd say.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
So your point though about like creativity isn't restricting the cards people can play with. Isn't that in a way cutting down on people's creativity? I
suppose so.
And as far as the arms race thing, that feels to me like a different discussion. That's not necessarily a result. I can see how the proxy thing might lead to that, and I can see that concern, but that feels like an entirely separate conversation.
Yeah.
And that's also just as likely to happen with real Magic cards, I think.
Sure.
Because people just we've been in that position, where somebody just starts buying and spending more in Magic, and it's kind of a competition of who has more disposable income for Magic. But yeah, saying that like we pin this down as the spirit of the format, creativity. And so like you were saying, restrictions can breed creativity, and I agree with that. But at the same time, there's a lot of Magic cards, and some just aren't very accessible. So people should be able to play with whatever they'd like.
Sure, like your Wheel of Fortune, you were saying. Like, people want to play Wheel of Fortune, so, who's to say they shouldn't, right? It's not, I think it's like $800 or $500. It's a lot.
Oh my God.
$300, whatever it is. It's several hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
But if you'd allow me to maybe try to rebuttal that.
Absolutely.
I think there is something to be said about playing replacements for these expensive cards can be fun and enjoyable. And if we're always only playing the most expensive, best versions of cards, maybe we're restricting ourselves from more cards that we could be enjoying playing with, right?
That is a very good point. That's actually, I find myself doing that a lot ever since we started proxying copies of cards.
Yeah, I do. Me too, actually. Like, yeah.
I'm a big land tax gamer, and I just thought, this should be in every white deck.
Yeah, I think maybe it's better to avoid doing that all the time because, for example, I have a Ristic Study that I own, but I don't play that in all of my blue decks, and you could make a very good argument that I should, but I think maybe building decks specifically keeping out some of your powerful staples might be a good idea.
Right, I definitely agree with that. I like playing with more different cards. I think we talked about on one episode, the professor talking about how certain staple cards are removing deck slots from your deck.
Oh yeah, a long time ago.
And so that is, in a way, cutting down on your creativity. He said, Soul Ring, Command Tower, Homeward Path, Commander Sphere.
This was a different time. This was a 4 or 5 years ago video.
Right, this was the in response video with Josh versus the professor. Yeah. And that's what we're doing right now. It's in response.
Nice. But yeah, if I could just say one thing as well. This is a little bit interesting. So I have now, and the funny thing is I'm being hypocritical here because I have cards that I have proxied in decks that are bad proxies. I'm sure everyone knows what I mean when I say a bad proxy, like a piece of paper with the card written on it or something. I think that if you are proxying cards in decks and intending to have them as long-term proxies, so like proxying another card that you own or even a card you don't own, and you're not like planning on getting a copy or something or replacing the proxy, you probably have some sort of responsibility to make it look like a Magic card, or at least make it look colored, not make it black and white, so people playing the game with you don't have a hard time understanding your stuff.
But Spencer,
yeah,
see, I'm full debate mode now.
Okay.
Couldn't you say, if the argument is they should be representative of the card as to accurately represent the game functionally, could you not say the same thing about foreign cards?
No, because they look like Magic cards.
That's true. You could at least look up.
Well, my problem is here you go. So if, let's say, worst case scenario, you have a black and white printed card, or you drew it or something. At least take a colored pencil and shade the background of it blue so I know it's a blue card, please. At the very least.
You think if I don't have the money for Magic cards, I have the money for colored pencils?
That's a good point. Well, is it too bad of a thing to say that Magic players probably have access to colored pencils?
Spencer Cook up in his ivory tower. No, I'm ruining the integrity of the discussion.
No, but like I was saying earlier, I have a proxied. I own a Crucible of Worlds, and I play that in my modern deck. Don't ask what the modern deck is, because you're like, why would you play modern deck? Why would you play Crucible of Worlds modern? Well, screw you. Don't. You can look it up on my Tapped Out or something. Mm-hmm. But I've got a copy of Crucible of Worlds in my Anji deck, and I don't have a good proxy Crucible Worlds, and I haven't been bothered to print a good one, so I literally have a 3/6 avatar token from Exodus or whatever, not Exodus, whatever that card is. So it's literally just that card, and that's Crucible of Worlds in my deck. And so I'm a super hypocrite right now.
Can you believe this, people? The hypocrisy. This is the trial of Spencer Cook now.
Now you get to discount everything I say, and you won the debate, right? That's how this goes? You've shown that I'm a bad faith debater. No.
Did you want to go into another point or pass it off to me?
You go ahead. You got it.
So one thing I had written down here is new, like we discussed on the accessibility of Commander. New players just might not have enough of a collection to make an effective deck, and might have to fill in most of the deck, if not a lot of or parts of the deck, with proxies.
Yeah,
to play an effective game and feel like they're competing.
So are you saying it can be very difficult to match power level without proxies for a new player?
Yeah, I think that's like we said, a pre-con can kind of hang you around, but I think there are some people who might get into Commander and their immediate friend group are the people who are teaching the Commander.
Just play a little bit
I think it is more common that people play pretty strong Commander decks.
I know, yeah, that's my experience, at least. It seems that people are moving away from pre-con level as the general play group level, right? For sure. Yeah, I can concede that point. Well, something interesting that I want to bring up is that I think players put too much emphasis on the Proxy Debate as part of their personality. And what I mean by that is players, at least on Twitter, we've been seeing some stuff, and players seem to get very upset over someone else having a different proxy opinion than them. And I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, so I'm like Eli, you and I, like, going out of the debate mode for a second. Mm-hmm. You and I aren't big fans of proxies of cards we don't own. But that being said, like, we're pretty outspoken about that, right? Like, we will, like, I'll tell someone, like, hey, I'd rather you didn't use proxies or something, whatever, right? That being said, I play with a very good friend of mine. He doesn't really own any Magic cards. He plays with entire proxy decks, and we have a great time, and I don't give him shit for that or anything. I've got another friend that I play with that, you know, has a lot of expensive cards, recently sold a bunch of them and you know, proxied a bunch of them. Another friend that has just, you know, one gold border card, Forcible, that he doesn't own, but we still play with them and stuff, and it's not that big of a deal. So I think players put too much emphasis on the proxy debate when they really just, you know, it doesn't matter that much.
I think both sides of the debate, ultimately we just want to play the game.
Yeah, I think that's...
At least in Commander, like Commander players.
Yeah.
We just want to play the game. And, you know, other people might have different areas where they put a lot of their investment in Magic. Mm-hmm. But that was actually another point on my list of things was, like you were saying about our friend that he doesn't have any Magic cards. It's because he's just not very invested in Magic. Some people just really don't care that much about it. I
mean, like he likes Magic and he plays cards and he knows a pretty good amount about the game, but like he doesn't want to get into investing money into it, right? That's all.
Yeah, say if I want to play Commander with my friends maybe once every 2 months, mm-hmm. should I have to spend $100 to do that?
Or, you know, maybe you want to have like 4 decks to play or something, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe there's I mean, that's a good point. Maybe there's a better argument for, well, there's a concept of how far away is a deck from you. So like if you're like a new Commander player with 0 cards, the jump from 0 cards to a Commander deck feels very large. So it can be a lot more accessible to print a deck. But if you're like a middle in franchise player and you like can build a deck, or maybe improve a deck, but like the cards that you might proxy might be like very expensive, like Mana Crypt or like Forcible or stuff like that. I think it's a different kind of jump where it could feel a little bit more nefarious, maybe. You know what I'm saying? Because there's this thing for proxies where it feels like when people are proxying, they can be taking advantage of you, or like taking advantage of your lack of funds, or your I want to say pride to not proxy or something, right? And that can feel bad for players that don't proxy. So I think ultimately I would just advise people to not take it so personally when someone has a stance on proxying. So like, don't shit on me for not liking to proxy cards I don't own, and I won't shit on you for liking to proxy cards. I'll let you know my opinion, but we don't need to get at each other's throats.
Yeah, it's mostly a personal preference, I think, like you said.
Yeah.
It's not like we're going to tell somebody that they shouldn't play with their proxy deck. Mm-hmm. It's just... it's not that big of a deal.
I might not be super happy about them proxying the deck, but that's not going to stop us from having a good time playing with each other.
And like I was saying earlier, I think it is it is kind of a different discussion too, of if you have somebody who's proxying every most expensive, most powerful card in the format and making a whole deck out of that. That's a really different thing than, like you said, our friend who has decks that are entirely proxied. Those decks are not super high power decks. They're like normal average commander decks. Yeah, like kind of like even like old school commander decks, and we have a lot of fun playing, and they're very balanced games, I think.
You know, I think when he was building his decks, he tried to stick with like $100 budget, and I think I was talking to him and I was trying to convince him to play a couple more expensive cards, honestly. Like, hey, you just put a Dockside in there. It's a pirate deck, you know? And I think we did convince him. So I think that's my fault.
Yeah, he did end up playing the Dockside and even Hull Breacher. Was that your fault too?
It's a pirate.
You son of a bitch! He'll fucking kill you.
Well, it's okay. It got banned, and I made a nice drawing proxy to replace it for him. Do you remember what card I put in? Oh, I put in a Ragavan. That's what it was. I proxied him a Ragavan to replace it.
Yeah, with the monkey.
I drew it.
The smiling monkey.
Yeah. Oh god, it looks so crazy. It looks so bad. Maybe I can find a picture of it and send it.
Post that
and post it. I'll ask him for a photo. Okay, well, what do you have anything more you want to talk about the debate thing?
Yeah, so we touched on this a little bit with talking about the professor's stance on proxies, or on reprints more so. That Magic cards are just game pieces, so they should be accessible for people to use as many as they need.
So, for example, like if you lose like the white queen in like a chess game, the game should function the same if you replace that with a stick of celery or something, right?
Right.
That's a bit of a weird analogy, but I think it
sure
it holds true. Man, that was not a great analogy. I feel like I've derailed the whole conversation.
It works.
No, it's fine. So I guess you're saying in the same way, ultimately it's just a game, and the pieces shouldn't really be cost prohibitive, right? Like, it doesn't seem like it makes a difference in the game, right?
Yeah, and it's the we brought this up at the intro to this, but the idea of gatekeeping people of lower socioeconomic status out of the game of Magic, and Commander specifically.
I don't think we want to do that personally.
Yeah, because it's weird. You want to think, I don't like the idea of proxies, but I also don't like the idea of people not being able to play the game if they want to play it.
Because we love the game, right? And of course I want people to play, but is there a like we were talking earlier about, is EDH accessible? Do you think it's fair to say that EDH isn't for everyone? Or do you think that's just not fair at all? I don't know.
There was a big
discussion about
backlash
this, right?
When somebody from Wizards, there was maybe a premium product like a master set.
This isn't for you, right?
And it was
That's
said,
what
this is not for certain players. And people took that very harshly.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I see anything inherently wrong with that, though.
Sure.
For certain things. Not, say, playing a basic game of Commander. The price... The prohibition, or like the...
I know what you mean. Oh god, what's the word?
Prohibitiveness.
Yeah, there you go.
Is baseline, like we said, for a pre-con.
30, 40?
$30-$40.
Yeah.
Up to 50 maybe with sales tax. So that's what can get you in, get you playing with one deck.
So in that sense, it feels like Magic can pretty much be for anyone. And if you cannot afford $30 or $40, there are people that will... If that is honestly the case, there are people that will make you decks and send them to you. I'm being genuine here.
Yeah, the Magic players are very generous.
That's the weird thing, is that there's like not two types. Magic players are it's freaking just Schrodinger's like Magic player, where they seem to all the time be mad at everybody, but also like some of the nicest people in the world. I don't know how they're both things.
Yeah, I will talk a lot of shit about Magic players, and I make some very negative attributions about Magic players as a general populace, but then at the same time, a lot of my favorite people and very best friends are people who I met through Magic. So it's I don't know how to feel.
It's jarring, right?
It's, they might be 1 in 100, but they're just some of the best people.
Yeah, and when we talk about like how bad Magic players are, we're kind of joking, There's a little bit of truth to it, but we're not honestly saying... It
is an unfair prejudice that I'm willing to admit. It's just me versus nerds in general, and a lot of aspects of nerd culture. But it's something to be aware of.
Yeah.
That's how you fight prejudice, is you acknowledge it.
But yeah, we ain't no we ain't no jocks. We ain't no tabletop jocks here. Sorry, that was a bad reference.
But yeah, I think it's like we said, Magic players want to have more people to play Magic with. So if there's a very heavily invested Commander player, they oftentimes, Magic players, we end up with a lot of bulk shit that we don't want.
Yeah.
And you can make a Commander deck out of that.
Yeah, no.
Like a somewhat decent deck, too. Like, around Precon, like maybe better than a Precon, just out of bulk that you can't sell or trade.
Or maybe even things you're not playing in other decks. honestly, here's interestingly enough, I've in my history of playing, I mean, I'm decently enfranchised. I've got a lot of cards, right, and have some expensive decks and stuff. But I've been a very price conscious person my whole life. I'm not a guy who's very quick to shell out big bucks for a commander deck, with notable exceptions. So in my history of playing Magic, I was the kind of guy who's like, make what I can with what I have. And maybe every once in a while you'll buy a box of Magic cards or you'll buy some singles, whatever. But I'm very much a cards I own deck person, and I still do that to this day. Granted, I have more cards, but like I will literally like I'll find a commander, and if I'm just want to, I'll be like, this is a Liesa cards I own deck, and I think that's kind of freeing, and maybe more Magic players should try it. Mm-hmm. So you don't always have to. Well, hold on. Well, let's get into our tips for.
Yeah, we got some personal, and some of these might come across as a little obvious, but personal financial tips and tricks for playing Magic the Gathering.
Yeah,
that we have used in the past, and I personally have a long history of gaining the system a little bit. I got in a middle school and high school. I didn't have a job, and I needed a way to make money, so I would occasionally swindle some cards out of some friends, maybe, and go and sell them.
Just get a good deal, you know what I'm saying?
I would sell my own cards pretty often if they were worth anything. I sold a foil Blightsteel Colossus for around $2.
No! Life is pain.
Yeah. Sold so many fetch lands because I was like, why are these cards even worth anything? They're literally a land. It gets you a basic land, and it deals 1 damage to you. Garbage.
And we're talking Zendikar fetches.
Yeah.
We ain't talking no. I guess those aren't expensive these days, but 4 years ago Zendikar fetches were expensive. Mm-hmm. But now they're back down to being the cheaper ones, so whatever.
But not saying you should do that. You should not swindle people out of valuable cards, and you shouldn't sell your own good cards for way less than you ought to get. But you can do a lot of trading. Yeah. So the first thing I want to talk about is if you have an established collection, and this might seem exclusionary because people who are newer to the game can't really rely on this tip, but you can trade with people and you can get what you need.
Yeah. You don't have to. I mean, there's something to be said about being a jack of all trades player. Like, you want to play a lot of different kinds of Magic. You want to experience all the colors and decks. But, for example, you, Eli, you're a Boros boy. You play a lot of Boros. So, you maybe don't need a bunch of mana drains. I think you had mana drains. You traded them away, right?
I've traded and sold 2 mana drains.
Yeah, and you can get some Boros cards with those,
Yeah, I've sold a lot of valuable green cards because I play green less than I think every color, honestly. I think I play more blue than green. Yeah. Surprisingly enough.
And you sometimes do play those colors, but, you don't need multiple copies of maybe colors you don't play as much or cards you don't think you'd play. So, for example, if a new player opened up a Mana Crypt, I don't know if I would advise them to keep it because they're going to want it at some point, or sell it because they'll be perfectly happy without owning a Mana Crypt. I'm not sure where I would go with that.
That's a good point about card quality versus quantity. If you have $50 to spend on Magic cards, don't buy one card.
Don't buy a doubling season.
That's a lot of other shows have made this point, like Command Zone. If you have that for their budget upgrade series, you want to affect the most percentage of your deck that you can.
Yeah.
So don't buy cards for over $20 unless it's something you really have always wanted or you think is really going to push it over the edge, or you're trying to upgrade it that little extra percentage and it's already a really good deck.
And on that same level, probably the worst way you can allocate money to make a deck better is the mana base. Because once you start getting into the expensive mana-based cards, you're making very small improvements to the deck for large amounts of money. So stuff like shock lands, fetch lands, dual lands, probably the worst way you can spend money if you want to improve your deck for the amount of money you're spending.
Yeah, definitely.
You can do perfectly fine with budget mana bases. I'm not saying play Guild Gates, but there's plenty of reasonably expensive, $1 dual lands that come in untapped sometimes and stuff like that. They're fine. Well, can I jump into a tip?
Yeah, absolutely.
As I was saying earlier, when I was transitioning into this topic, you don't need to play every powerful card. Sometimes it's okay to just, not play the best version of every card in existence. And by choice. You don't have to, for example, I've got my Liesa deck that I said was a cards I own deck. I own, cards like Reanimate and Swords to Plowshares, and I chose to not put them in that deck, not because I wanted to make it weaker, but because I wanted some variety. Well, I guess I did want to make it a little weaker too, but I wanted to play some different kinds of removal and reanimation, maybe more expensive or more... So, I play... what's the flashback reanimation spell?
Unbarrel Rights.
Unbarrel Rights, yeah. I wanted to play that card, so... And I think if you're not able to maybe shill out $10 or $20 for reanimate, you could force yourself into maybe trying new, cheaper things, and maybe you find that you enjoy it.
Yeah, maybe it's kind of a retrain your brain sort of thing to, instead of seeing your lack of cards as a misfortune, see it as an opportunity.
Yeah, to maybe even... I know one thing Magic players love is they love to be clever, and it's not a bad thing to think you're clever. And if you are cost prohibitive, you're prohibited. Sorry, I think you can find new and unique ways to do things with cards that are cheaper. I know everyone loves this is my budget card. This is my cool budget card I love.
And then you get to be like, guys,
this
card is so underplayed, criminally underplayed.
EDH Shakes episode whatever number. Yeah, underplayed cards. Epic. Okay, well, what do you got for me, Eli? What's another financial tip and trick?
So this is I think another one that the Command Zone might have talked about in the past, but it's something that I try and do now, and I think you do too. But if you're buying a cheap card, say it's around $1 or less, and you've got a little extra change in your pocket, maybe pick up a second copy.
Yeah,
if you like the card, stands to reason somebody else might too.
Or maybe you want another copy of it, right? Yeah, later down the line.
Yeah, for future you.
Even sometimes when sets comes out, I'll buy 2 or 3 or 4 copies of an uncommon that I like that's 20 cents or something. Just what's the difference between 25 cents and $1, right? For having 4 copies of an uncommon that I think I might play a couple times. And even if it's not even if it's not a card that is the best card to play, just having the extra copies when I'm looking through my collection, I'll be like, hey, maybe I'll put that in something, right?
Yeah, and this is not a specking or an investment tip. It's just a convenience sake thing.
Yeah. So, card that I kind of like that I don't think is particularly powerful is I don't know the name of the card, but it's the Foretell Angel that kind of is a mini Sun Titan kind of thing from Kaldheim. And I don't think a card's particularly powerful, but I bought 4 copies, and when I build a white deck, maybe I'll throw it in there and have fun.
So even if the card never goes up in value, worst case scenario, you've saved yourself another trip to the game store or a trip to whatever website you're ordering cards from.
Yeah. So, there you go. Okay, well, another tip that I've got is to not... So, the whole everyone wants... Like I was saying earlier, people like to think that they are very smart and smarter than other people. Don't go too crazy in specking for cards when new sets comes out, because... It's really hard to be right on specs. I know it's fun, but generally, or maybe even to go even further, maybe don't buy cards right away when set comes out, because typically it seems to be the case that generally card prices go down for the first couple of weeks as a set is opened, and then all of the cards are sold online, and there's a kind of a race to the bottom thing. So pre-order prices generally... unless a card is criminally, undervalued or whatever, generally are higher than what they're going to be later. If you really are super confident that a card is going to go up, I guess you can buy it, but I would caution against it.
Yeah, be very purposeful for why you're buying cards, because just specking on cards, if you're not actually planning to flip those cards... It could go really wrong.
Oh man, I've got a very very short story about that. I'm notorious for not selling or trading my cards ever. So I I spec'd on Arclight Phoenix when that card came out. And by spec'd on, I mean I opened like a copy and I bought like a playset of, just because I thought it was kind of a good card and I kind of liked it. They were like $2 a piece, so I bought like a playset for like $8. And then that card turned out to be like a $30 card because it was like making waves in Standard and Modern for like several months, like 4 or 5 months. And I think I sold or traded one of them away, and I had 5 copies, and I still have those 5 copies. Now the card I think is maybe $3 or something because the formats changed and stuff. And I'd never played Modern or whatever with them. I never played them really anything, and I just never got around to selling them. So if you don't realize your gains from your investments, they're not, you haven't gained anything.
I was gonna say I thought I did the same thing with Skyclave Apparition, but that's down to around $5 again.
Really?
I think I got it for cheaper because it was like close to the set release.
Oh man!
And it wasn't like a thing yet, but I got like 3 or 4 of those, and but that's pretty affordable right now. It's a good card.
I bought a playset for like $7 or $8 a piece a couple months ago, so I guess I missed out, but I'm not too upset. Okay, well, you got any other good tips for us, Eli?
Yeah, that just the Skyclave thing reminded me. I think I said it earlier in the episode, but just making sure when you buy singles that you know what cards in your deck you're going to take out for that card. So you don't end up buying like a $5 single and then being like, oh, this is not better than anything I have in here, and I don't know what to do with it now.
Make the cut first before you buy the card.
Make sure you know exactly what cards you're taking out and you have the right amount and you're not overdoing it. And again, if it's really cheap, you might pick up an extra copy, and it might not hurt you to have that extra Skyclave Apparition in your binder.
When the card's really cheap, or if it's a card you know you're going to play at some point, you can pick up the card. That's fine. But if it's like an expensive card or something, or even like just like a medium priced card, and you don't know what you're taking out, or even if you're really going to play it or not, I don't know. It's scary.
Yeah, especially with changing out one card in your commander deck, especially if you have lots of commander decks. Like I said earlier in the episode about taking a card out of the deck before you even get to play with it, that is going to happen.
Yeah.
I think I was just looking through Twitter before we did this, and Dana Roach from the EDH Accessible did a thread of his favorite commander cards from 2021 that he has yet to draw in a game.
Some of those cards are kind of cool.
Yeah, they are cool, but it's like that can just happen. You can get got like that.
Yeah.
Because the odds that you just, out of your 100-card deck, unless you're tutoring for it specifically, which a lot of the times you're not, because it's rare that these cards are so good that they're the best card that you want to tutor for.
Well, and a lot of players have many decks. I know, what was it? Jumbo Commander, DJ, he had that classic video of showing all 30 of his decks, whatever, one for every color combination or something.
Yeah, the Chromatic Challenge.
Yeah. So, if you have that many decks and you put a new card in one of them, well, I don't know how often you're going to play that new deck, right?
Yeah, when I get excited about a new card that I put in a deck, I try to play that deck, like, all night.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you still don't get the card.
It happens.
You really have to make, like, 5 to 10 changes to see much of a difference in a game.
Right away, yeah. To be confident that you're going to see something different. Sure. Okay, I got another good one. If you're building a deck that hinges on an expensive card, so, for example, I was thinking, like, if you're playing a deck that needs Craterhoof Behemoth or something like that, maybe, don't play that deck. And I'm not saying you can't, like, play the deck you want to play, but maybe you can make adjustments in your deck elsewhere to maybe make it so you don't need the Craterhoof. So, for example, some people will do, like, Tooth and Nail and Craterhoof. Well, if you don't want to like spend the $50 for a Craterhoof Behemoth, well, then you also probably don't need a Tooth and Nail. You don't need to like play Tooth and Nail and like a worse Craterhoof kind of card. I mean, you could play like an Enrace Forerunners or something, but like maybe try to shift it over to a more affordable finisher. I don't know. That's just an idea. So, what do you think about that, Eli?
Yeah, it's definitely like we were talking about earlier, the idea of classic Feather versus something like, well, I suppose even my version of like that, like Blink Feather, could be built pretty cheap, but there's definitely some, like, you can't build, or I don't think you can build a very effective, cheap, good stuff deck.
Sure.
If you're just like, I want to play all my favorite cards and all the best cards. That's not a deck you can make.
Well, not cheaply.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some archetypes, or maybe another example is a Super Friends deck. If you want to make a Super Friends deck on a budget, you have to make some pretty tough choices. So like making Super Friends decks without doubling season or whatever, right? Or without the good planeswalkers that cost a lot of money.
Oh, that feels
It's hard.
So weird though, because I wonder if you could make a halfway decent Super Friends deck based around the War of the Spark uncommon planeswalkers. Because I was going to say the biggest knock against Super Friends decks is that you're building around a card type
Mythics,
that
right?
is mythic rarity.
Rares, yeah. But then they've made rares and uncommon since then, so...
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing is... Yeah, I suppose. Or maybe a Reanimator deck, because with a Reanimator deck, you kind of need beaters, like big Reanimation boys, and the best ones of which are generally pretty expensive cards, and you need, like, the best Reanimation spells cost a lot of money, too. Like, Reanimate's, like, $10, $20, something like that, so... I mean, there are cheap alternatives, but you're gimping yourself from the start. So maybe try to approach a deck archetype that lends itself better to a budget deck. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like say this was one of our most valid, or like one of our best criticisms of the first episode, the Boros episode. Say you want to make a very like higher power, like strong Boros deck.
Good luck without spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's going to take some cash.
Yeah. But, maybe maybe it's not going to be the best deck, but if you build, like, what's the cycling commander that they made in the pre-con? Do you remember her name? Gavi. I don't think a Gavi deck with, like, all of the cycling cards is going to be very expensive. I don't think there's too many cycling cards that are more than $1 or $2. I can't think of many.
I'm trying to think. I mean, that was the deck with...
Well,
I was going to say, what's the pre-con cost? Because I was going to say, you might be able to get it for $50.
Not the pre-con, because...
But it's got Fierce Guardianship.
Yeah, Fierce Guardianship, and that's a $40 card or something.
That pre-con might be expensive now.
But. Yeah, but the point stands that some archetypes, the bulk of your deck, maybe 80 cards or something, are going to be pretty cheap. So, depending on what you're playing. Mm-hmm. Okay, you got something else for me? Some other tip, Eli?
Yeah, so... if you want to play with some expensive cards, though, everyone should be able to do it. We don't want to gatekeep playing expensive cards. You could steal them. Not IRL, in the game.
Come on.
It is always cheaper to play the cards that steal your opponent's permanents or effects such as Gonti. Ways that allow you to kind of use these expensive game pieces.
I would say bribery, but that one's actually expensive.
That's more expensive.
The new suspend bribery. There you go.
Yeah, and so those cards, you can build a whole deck around that theme, and I think those decks can be pretty cheap. Like I have a Thada Adele deck, and that deck, I think Thada might be somewhat expensive now.
I think she's less than $10, but yeah.
But you could build a very cheap version of that deck. Might not necessarily be, but I think aside from a few cards, it would be. And that can be a good deck because it's built around just stealing other people's good cards.
You're going to do good things. You're going to steal a Soul Ring. You're going to steal a KCI or something, Whatever, I got a funny story about that Gonti concept, by the way, because I remember when Gonti came out in Aether Revolt? Is that what he's from?
I think Kaladesh.
No, Kaladesh, okay, but the Kaladesh block, whatever. I remember playing in the Kaladesh pre-release, or it could have been the Aether Revolt pre-release because they had Kaladesh packs as well. Mm-hmm. But I remember getting a Gonti in my sealed pool, and the big thing that came out with Kaladesh was Kaladesh Inventions. And I remember playing in my second or third game with the pre-release, and I Gontied my opponent, pick up the top couple cards of his deck, and I see, ooh, very pretty Invention Solemn Simulacrum. So I just kind of very gently slide that onto my side of the table, upside down, and treating it very gently. And then, next turn I untap and I go, boom, and I'm like, oh, yes, very, very epic. So, playing blinged out cards from your opponents, pretty base.
That is a thing to keep in mind if you're playing that kind of deck. Be very polite to people's cards.
Yeah, do that.
Be very careful, because if you damage somebody's expensive card, you are a dickhead.
Try to avoid that, please. What else we got here? If you want to play stuff that's a little bit more budget, you could consider playing online, like Magic the Gathering online, because a lot of prohibitive cost cards are cheaper on Magic Online. That is to say, some cards are more expensive on Magic Online too, but for the generally, Magic Online is cheaper.
Yeah, there are rare exceptions, like Sol Ring is more expensive than Mana Crypt.
Yeah.
So it's a weird meta on Magic Online where pretty much everyone has a Mana Crypt, and they're actually more likely to have Mana Crypt than Sol Ring.
I have a Mana Crypt in my deck. I don't have a Sol Ring because I didn't want to buy it. Because like $10, and I was like, no. But yeah, like a card. Oh god, help me out here, Eli. 2 mana green enchantment, draw cards.
Oh, Sylvan Library.
Sylvan Library is like 20 cents on Magic Online. And in paper, it used to be like $100. Now it's like $30 or something because it got reprinted. But
all the dual lands are hella cheap. I think Plateau
bucks.
was sub $1 when I
Nice.
started. And it's cool because Magic Online, I did put a decent amount of money into it. I think all in all, I spent a little under $100, and I got 2 very effective and strong decks, I would even say.
And if you want to go further, you have all those staple cards to put in other decks too.
Yeah, so that's what made it especially easy. Is I wanted to make 2 Boros decks of commanders that I didn't want to build more Boros decks in paper, so I thought I'll play them on Magic Online. I built a Tiana Auras deck. That was a really cheap deck to build because a lot of auras are just super cheap.
Yeah,
and I was
on
able
Magic
to get
Online, yeah.
Replenish on Magic Online.
Oh, yeah.
For like $5, I think. And that's cool to be able to play with a card like that I can't afford in paper. And then I had a lot of Boros staples. I tried to build the deck in a way that was pretty. It was had a theme to it, but it also had like a decent amount of staples in it in case I wanted to build another deck. And then I built my Akiri Fearless Voyager deck after that and had a lot of the cards ready to go.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
A lot of fun on Magic Online, and it also you always have people to play with.
That's true.
That's another issue of playing Commander is sometimes you spend a lot of money on a deck and you never get the chance to play it.
Yep.
And then when you go on your rare occasion you get to go and play at the game store, you get extra mad because things don't go how you expected. And you feel cheated.
Yeah, when you're playing a Magic Online, if you have a bad game, you didn't ruin, you didn't have to go anywhere for it. You can just kind of
Hey, you
chill.
scoop.
You scoop and you leave. No.
Yeah, you mulligan 2 times and don't draw Mana Crypt or Sol Ring. You just scoop out of that game. Start another game where you do have them.
All right. I think our last thing here is the classic pilfer the draft chaff at your LGS if you have one, because people will they'll draft and they'll leave their random commons and uncommons, and there's good cards in there sometimes. Honestly.
Yeah, honestly.
You get good
found
shit.
some cool stuff recently, right?
Yeah, you find some rares sometimes. You find the playable commons and uncommons that you want to put in your commander decks, and that's a thing that they've been doing recently more. There've been a lot. Well, I don't know if it's more, but there've been a lot of pretty solid commander playable commons and uncommons. Honestly.
Yeah, and the hardcore drafters at the store too, they don't necessarily care about what's good for commander.
Yeah.
So and a lot of people even will I'll see people throw packs in the trash.
Yeah.
And luckily, I think our game store has kind of discouraged that with their draft chaff box.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and if you mention that you're a new Commander player, a new Magic player in general, like we said earlier, people are very generous and they want to have another friend to play Commander with.
Yeah.
So they'll look after you. You might be able to even borrow a deck until you have your own one ready to go and get some ideas for what you like playing with.
Sure. Well, I think that's about what we got for the financial tips and tricks. Do you wanna do more stuff, or you wanna call it there, Eli? What are you thinking?
I think we got everything pretty much covered, but yeah. So what do you think, Spencer, about the cost of Magic? Is it affordable? Is it accessible?
It's expensive. Depending on, I think the one thing that's really cool about Magic, especially Commander, is you really do have entry points into the format, and you can kind of build up a collection over time. You don't have to spend $200, $300 to start playing Magic. You can start playing with $30 or $40, and then over time, $10 here or there, $20 here or there, maybe get cool things you like. And I like that. You can build up stuff. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's that's what I've always liked about Magic is the trading card game aspect of it, is being able to kind of build your own collection through trading and just like getting new cards, and there's a lot you can do with it, and especially once you do build that collection, I think there's been points where I did want new singles from a set, but I didn't feel like spending money on Magic at that time. So I just go through my binder and think, what can I trade into the game store that I'm not playing with?
What cards do I not care about, or would not make me upset if I didn't have them anymore?
And I know some people might cringe at the idea of trading cards in for trade credit at game store, because I know you're kind of getting gypped out of some value and some equity, but those cards sitting in your binder, they're not doing you any good.
They're converting it to happiness of your other cards, your new cards you're getting.
Yeah, if what you really want to do is play the game, just do what you can to play the game. I know people like to think of all the investments. I might talk about like the Blightsteel Colossus that I traded in for $2. I do regret that, but
ultimately, like at the time, it probably brought you more joy than it was losing.
You can't live your life in fear of, oh, what if I hadn't done this, or what if I just get the cards you want. Just play the game.
Yeah, within reason. Yeah, I agree. Do you want to talk about anything, any drama that's been going on, or do you think we should call it there? What do you want to do?
Oh, like the proxy discussion? I think we mentioned a little bit.
I'll just give a very brief overview, maybe. There's been some very heated Twitter discussion recently. I don't know if I'm going to put stuff up on screen or not. I don't know if I want to call out anyone in particular, but pretty much the people have been very, very vocal about other people's characters on Twitter, about different opinions on the proxy debate, and I think the takeaway that I just want to give people is don't take it that seriously. Don't harass people on Twitter about their proxy opinions, and also don't harass people for quote-unquote sending people to harass you on Twitter when that's not really it's not clear that that's the case.
Yeah, just don't try to read in so much malice into what people say just because somebody says something maybe a little bit pointed towards one side or the other.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily an attack.
That's one thing that, we joke around a lot, Eli. We make fun of some people because, we're goofballs. But ultimately, just ascribe more charity to people. Give them the benefit of the doubt more often. I think the world will be a better place.
Yep.
Yep.
Big Twitter thing in general. Just people are very apt to misinterpret people and be willfully ignorant.
Yeah. Very frustrating, but hey man, it's Twitter, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
We
have been tweeting more though on the Twitter.
Yeah, so
follow us on @EDH Takes.
For only bangers and good discussion. That's all we tweet. And
we should do some more memes.
You guys want? Yeah,
people like memes.
I have taken to posting pictures of Jimmy Wong's face every time he's on a new game nights because they have the
game nights and extra turns.
They have the really zoomed in faces they do, and I just post a picture of Jimmy's face and say something stupid, like me when I don't draw Mana Crypt on turn 1 or something dumb like that. I don't know, just some cringe shit. But yeah, so appreciate the any opinions you guys have on financials, proxies, whatever you want to talk about.
Let us know what you think, or if you have the pro gamer strat for hacking the Magic system, like the cost of Magic.
Yeah, you're well, I think the actual strat, Eli, is you just walk into Wizard's headquarters and just take the sheets off of the printing line, right? Then you just have the cards.
Who's going to stop you, Mark Rosewater?
I think the actual strat is you try to buy the first, what was it? The Collector's Edition boosters box, or whatever it was, and then they cancel your order, and then to apologize, they send you a foil sheet of Magic cards, and then you cut those up, and then you have the Magic cards for free. That's the strat.
Yeah.
This is a lore thing that happened at the start of 20... Or it was in 2020? It was in 2020, wasn't it?
Happened a couple times.
Yeah, so if you don't know about that, don't worry about it. It's not important. If you know, you know, okay? If you're in the know and you got one of those sheets, I got one. Maybe I'll put a picture in it. So, it's been in my closet for a year.
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. Give us a like. Give us does dislike got disabled on
So you
YouTube,
can still dislike, but you can't see the dislikes.
Oh,
but you can still dislike if you want to.
But comments definitely too. And yeah, if you're not subscribed, we really appreciate that. I like seeing the little number tick up. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
milestones.
We're gonna be doing a tier list video in like a week, so probably.
We're getting back into it.
I know everyone loves those more than they love the podcast. I'm just kidding.
But yeah, I've been Elijah Samuelson.
And I'm Spencer Cook.
And I want to leave you guys with one more piece. Ultimately, the best thing you can do as far as saving money in Magic. Sell your collection, quit the game. Bye, everybody.
Bye.